Welcome back, everyone. As we're here online again together today, exploring the history, the culture, and the taste of French wines, and how these three elements merge to create a unique region with quite astounding and wonderfully different wines from each week. I'm excited to be back with you and I look forward to helping you along your wine journey again this week. Quick reminder, don't forget that anytime you have questions, simply type it in the chat and I'll get to you right away. So let's begin. And today, as you all know from our emails and handouts that we've had over the week, we're in the south central region of France, in Provence, and then even into a smaller region within Provence called Chateau, Neuf de Pape. So Chateau being the French word for castle or chateau, Neuf being kind of the old word for new, and Pape, well, that's the word for Pope. So the wine is called the New Castle of the Pope because, quite frankly, he built a palace here and started making wine. As we discussed previously, each week we'll learn about the unique history and culture of different wine regions. And then at the end of the class, we'll taste the wine and see if we can determine if the wine matches what we've learned about that region culturally. Similarly, each region we study is filled with unique stories and cultural lore, and Chateau Neuf de Pape is a region that does not disappoint in this area. There are many history books written about the myths, the legends, the medieval tales of knights and barons and matrons and princesses all making and drinking wine here. And also there's plenty of modern tales too. Did you know that Chateau Neuf de Pape is the only wine region in the world that has a law in the books where UFOs and flying saucers are prohibited from landing in the region? Really, pretty weird. So we'll discuss that a little bit in just a few more minutes before the end of the class. So let's get started. It's one of my favorite regions of France, and of course in French wine. It's a region I know well. I've been wine tasting here every single year for the last 30 years, other than 1 year in COVID. So indeed, it's one of my favorites, and it's one I know fairly well. So historically, though, it was fairly blasé area for wine until 1307. That all changed. As you learned in your handouts, I hope, the papacy moved from Rome to Avignon, and Avignon is only 17 kilometers or 10 miles away from Chateau Neuf de Pape. And the papacy stayed in Avignon for 70 years before returning back to Rome. So during this 70-year period, there were 7 popes who served from here, from Avignon, and basically it was the Vatican for nearly a century. So the papacy had long been involved in the wine region of Burgundy in northeast France that we learned last week. It had been a great wine-growing region, and there were lots of monasteries that were built in that region to support the Catholic Church, and on many levels, the Pope himself. But now the Pope wanted something closer to them, so they found a region which has multiple styles of grapes and also microclimates. They built a summer castle here because it was just too far to travel 20 kilometers, and because the rest of the year they were in Avignon, and quickly brought in some of the best grape growers and winemakers to the region. The wine quickly became a wine for dignitaries and also religious leaders, which would carry it far and wide across Europe as it gained quite a stellar reputation, as it does still today. But what else made this wine so special? The soil and lack thereof. So that's right. So far, the wines we've discussed previously have been grown mainly in soil or dirt, which sounds normal as it's a crop. But we've now moved to south central region of France where it's hot in the summer, and this area has a unique set of growing conditions. In Chateau Neuf de Pape, the soil can be rocky, really rocky, pebbly, but also pure sand. When you have the first 2 types of sand, rocky and pebbly, the grapes still absorb some of the flavors into the grapes and thus into the wine that they're pulling from the soil and dirt. But there's not much soil and dirt in this area. But in a field of pebbles and sand, we need to realize that the sand is nothing more, and the sand starts just below the surface, and their sand is nothing more than tiny rocks, which produces no taste whatsoever for the grapes. So there's no soil. So those roots are digging deep for water, and you only taste the grapes and their special flavors because the vines are not absorbing any flavors in that sand. So in particular of the growing condition, the individual grapes have a super heavy lift here of creating the flavors for the wine. So it's again, it's not chalk, it's not anything else but that powerful grape that's giving you that flavor. Another interesting cultural piece, and similar to what we learned in Beaune, is Provence. They have their own shape of their wine bottle. So they had this now created this special wine. So we have to have, like, we can't have the same as Beaune or the same wine bottle as Champagne. So we chose a different bottle and created a different bottle. And though they use, Chateau Neuf uses the same bottle that you would have in all of Provence, as you've learned from your bottle that you've had this week, we have Chateau Neuf here across the top. We have a mitre in the middle, so that it's like a religious tall hat. You can look up mitre and the history of a mitre. And then of course you have Chateau Neuf de Pape and the keys of Peter, the cross keys of Peter. So this has to be raised, and to do that you have to have a much thicker bottle. So even though it's the same shape as Provence bottles, this is a much thicker and oftentimes a darker bottle than the rest of Provence would have. And all of this is a reminder, and there's not going to be a wine bottle in Chateau Neuf de Pape that doesn't have this seal on it, or have this thickness, or be darker. And it's all, again, a reminder that they said, wow, the Pope was here, the popes lived here, and this was 700 years ago of tradition that we have. So finally, in our kind of micro class, what we've got going on is tasting. So everyone was asked to purchase a bottle of Chateau Neuf de Pape and pour it and get it ready for tasting. So I hope you poured your glass. And if not, please do that quickly while I go through one other quick fact. So we have it open up and to start to add some air in the wine and let it become softer to our palates. Oftentimes wine is drunk too soon after bottling and too soon after opening the bottle. And the fruit from the wine needs to ripen. Think about going to a grocery store and there's green bananas. There are no yellow bananas, there are only green bananas. And you can't take them home and eat them because they're not ripe. And the same is so true for wine. The air will help open it up, ripen it. And though it won't take 2 or 3 days like a green banana, 2 or 3 hours can give you the same kind of ripening effect. So a pro tip would be, before you have your guest over for dinner, go ahead and open up your bottles of wine. Let them get some air. If you have a decanter, go ahead and pour it in the decanter and let it start ripening before you start pouring it out, before you spend all that time on that meal. So hopefully many of you've poured your wine in your glass. Maybe you've had a glass or two before even class. You can taste it like last week. Get a little bit of air in there. What are you tasting? Let's hear. You guys are good about putting things in the chat. What is it that you're tasting? Cherries, plums, right? Exactly. Pungent, you're tasting pungent, good, yes. And robust, good, right. Absolutely, totally different than Beaune and that Burgundy wine that we had last year. So leather, good, leather, yeah, dirt, absolutely. Got kind of old mildew must, sometimes people say, if you have, especially have an older bottle, but the more it opens up, kind of the kind of better it gets. So swirl it, take your nose deep in there, smell it. Sometimes you'll, from putting your nose down in that glass, pepper. So pepper, super dark fruit, not really like fruit like peaches or anything like this. So a dark fruit. So enjoy that, and just know that that all of that history that's built into that for 7 centuries making this blend. You know, it's a blend of, I think it can be up to 18 different grapes that can be in this wine, where remember in Beaune, it's only 1, it's just Pinot Noir, and in Champagne, it can only be 3. And so this can be a blend, but yet it comes out very similar each and every time. So I think, let's not forget that this is a very historic wine, a very prestigious wine, very interesting wine that was for knights and barons and chevaliers and the Knights Templar and kings and queens. It's an unending history, but it's also modern history, and it's the same wine that people drank when they saw flying saucers over the fields of Chateau Neuf de Pape in the 1950s. So much so that the government decreed that no one could allow flying saucers to land without severe punishment. So So for the Americans, maybe this is a type of Roswell. For everyone else, I'm sure you have your own wonderful UFO stories, and I hope that you can recount them one day when tasting wine in Chateau, Neuf, along with all that other history too. So, santé.